What do I get? Fats Brown, that's what I get. Fats Brown. Oh, you're pretty good, Jesse. But Fats is better. Fats is the best. Fats. Fats. I'll say it again. Fats Brown is dead!
Fats Brown. Report to Lister's Pool Room, Randolph Street, Chicago.
Our Twilight Zone review marathon continues with another classic episode that's all about a game of pool. Please note, spoilers are ahead. A Game of Pool was episode 5 from season 3. It was written by the celebrated science fiction fantasy writer George Clayton Johnson, who's credited with writing many Twilight Zone episodes. Johnson is noted for also co-writing the famous 1967 dystopian novel Logan's Run, but among Star Trek fans, he's known for writing Man Trap, aka the one with the disgusting salt monster. Question. Can a Twilight Zone episode without flying saucers, robots, gremlins, or any of the typical sci-fi elements still stand out? Well, if you're talking about this episode, then the answer is hell yes. A Game of Pool proves without a doubt, as long as the story is solid and everything else is in place, acting, writing, dialogue, and execution, we don't need no stinking salt monsters. Rod Serling opened this episode in a memorable fashion, in scene and chilling with the pool stick. Jesse Cardiff, Pool Shark, the best on Randolph Street, who will soon learn that trying to be the best at anything carries its own special risks, in or out of the Twilight Zone. The star of this episode was Jack Klugman, who played Jesse Cardiff, a bitter as hell, over-the-top, obsessed pool player. Jesse declared himself the greatest pool player ever, but something stands in his way, a legend, more specifically a deceased legend, Fats Brown, who even in death managed to overshadow Jesse.
Look, I've come a long way, boy, and not to be fooled with. I've seen your kind before. A little skill, a knack, a style. But when the heat's on, you fold.
Once Fats Brown appeared, he took Jesse up on his challenge, and the episode kicked into gear. Fats immediately upped the stakes. If Jesse won, he'd be acknowledged as the best. But if he lost, that meant death. Naturally, Jesse was hesitant at first, but after some hardcore insults by Fats, Jesse accepted and a high-stakes game began. And what was on the line was pretty serious: Fats' legacy and Jesse's life. The high-tension pool game itself is great, with both players making impressive shots and the high stakes remaining in focus with every crack of the ball. But the true heart of this episode wasn't necessarily the pool game itself, or even the fact that a dead man returned to answer a challenge. What really kept this story engaging as hell was watching a relentless back and forth between Jesse and Fats Brown. The dialogue between the two is excellent. As the game plays out, the two hammer into each other with insults and jabs. Fats hounded Jesse for not being as good as he claimed. He even went as far as to write him off as a big mouth, afraid to put it all on the line. Fats is the king of shit-talking. Under any other circumstances, their war of words would have easily escalated into a brawl. Throughout the entire episode, Fats was relentless. To be clear, his verbal attacks on Jesse weren't just meant as insults. Sure, his jabs were meant to throw Jesse off his game and to test him, but underneath that, Fats was angling to get Jesse thinking about his life choices. In fact, Fats went after Jesse for doing nothing with his life but play pool. Fats patted himself on the back because in life, he was able to not only be the best at pool, but he also managed to enjoy himself and have a healthy life outside of a dark pool hall. These particular jabs are at the core of this episode. Our lead, Jesse, has very obviously taken his desire to be the best way too far. Ultimately, the high-stakes game came down to an easy shot for Jesse. Fats warned Jesse he didn't truly understand the burdens that would come with being the best, but Jesse of course ignored him, took the shot, and won. With that, a Twilight Zone twist came in the form of a scene that took place years later. After he died, Jesse realized the burden of being the best meant spending his entire afterlife defending his crown. Rod Serling's closing narration reinforced this sobering conclusion. Mr. Jesse Cardiff, who became a legend by beating one, but who was found out after his funeral that being the best at anything carries with it a special obligation to keep on proving it. Mr. Fats Brown, on the other hand, having relinquished the champion's mantle, has gone fishing. These are the ground rules in the Twilight Zone. As is the case with all Twilight Zone episodes, there's a solid fantasy element at play. A dead man returns from the afterlife to answer a challenge to his title as best pool player. On paper that may sound out there, but the performances were so engaging and the underlying message was so well executed, you barely noticed the fantasy aspect. Jesse personified the win-at-all-costs mentality. But unlike some greedy Wall Street tycoon, Jesse's win-at-all-costs mentality didn't necessarily mean he was willing to hurt others. But he was willing to hurt himself. He deprived himself of everything in life. Friendships, dating, movies, any and all joys of living was set aside due to his obsession with becoming the best pool player. He needed this title so bad, it was almost sad to watch. Competition is something we can all relate to. Healthy competition, that is. As a kid, maybe you strive for good grades, or maybe you practice every day so you could hold your own on the basketball court. This type of thing continues throughout life for all of us. It's normal to want to be great at your job or your career. This episode isn't necessarily saying competition and striving to be better is bad. Quite the opposite. Fats himself stated we all need a challenge, something to strive for. But Jesse is a glaring example of why we also need balance. You can't toss away everything in life in the interest of a title. We can easily draw parallels from this episode to our modern day and people who are overly competitive. People from all walks of life still push themselves to their limits to break records and be the very best. However, in pushing yourself too hard, you could potentially neglect other aspects of your life. Obsessing over any one goal can also put serious strain on your mental and physical health. Again, competition and striving to achieve your goals is fine. Just keep in mind, as we all claw and fight our way to the top of the heap, stop and smell the damn roses along the way. Jack Klugman was in a total of 4 Twilight Zone episodes, but this one was my favorite. He really shined in this episode alongside Jonathan Winters. These two played great off each other and had solid chemistry. Jonathan Winters was just shady enough to keep you rooting for Jesse to take him down. Casting Klugman, who was definitely an everyman, likable guy, was a smart move. He was able to utilize his likability and create a nuanced portrayal of a thoroughly obsessed and flawed man. Another awesome episode with a very smart life lesson and a positive message, which serves as food for the soul. I rate this one 5 out of 5 salt monsters. Just kidding. I rate this one 5 out of 5 happy Jack Klugman faces. On a related note, if you want to see a few other examples of insanely ambitious characters pushing themselves to the limit, check out these movies.